director of Galerie Myrtis. To my right is Sharayna Christmas. To hers is Jerrell Gibbs, and a surprise panelist in his official capacity as vice president, aka my man, Alex Hyman. So let's dive in. Today's discussion will address how ballet and the arts as a whole can move towards greater inclusivity and equity. Today, Jerrell Gibbs and Sharayna Christmas will examine the power of visual art and dance to challenge systematic prejudices, reclaim narratives, and inspire change. Gibbs' current body of work and the exhibition's title, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, challenges historically ingrained biases within the world of ballet by celebrating Black dancers, including his daughter Reagan, through his paintings. Sharayna Christmas, an activist, multidisciplinary dancer, filmmaker, and educator, will draw from her 25-year career in dance, including early training at the Dance Theater of Harlem and performances at the 1996 Olympic Games, to discuss the legacy of ballet's racial and physical biases. As a cultural worker and founder as Muse 360 and many others, an intergenerational nonprofit that engages in the development of the next iteration of creativity through civic engagement, aligned artistic training, and Black diasporic study abroad exchanges. So welcome to everyone. Welcome to Truth to Power up in here today. So my first question for the two of you is, ballet has long imposed rigid standards rooted in Eurocentrism. How does your work use the Black body to challenge those ideas and offer new frameworks for understanding grace, technique, and discipline? And Sharayna, when you address this question, I want you to put your career in context. So why don't you start there?
Yeah, for sure. So what I think was different for me as a young dancer, what was different for me was that I trained at Dance Theater of Harlem. And if anybody knows the history of Dance Theater of Harlem, founded by Arthur Mitchell, between 1968 and 1969, after King's assassination, he left a potential ballet in Brazil to do this work. So I kind of came up with that ethos, that energy. But I was just a young dancer there. However, the system of the Eurocentric, westernized standards still persisted, right? Like there were spaces where, I was told I was, too short and too muscular, right? There were some instances where folks were still leaning into those, like, spaces of really kind of imposing the ways in which we saw ourselves as Black dancers. But then as I got older and as I started to get into Alvin Ailey, actually at that time, we didn't have any modern at Dance Theater of Harlem. Arthur Mitchell, God rest his soul, was very strict. So we only could do ballet. So that meant maybe 8 to 9 hours in the summer, only ballet. But Alvin Ailey at the time would come in and do modern, and I loved it, but I just couldn't practice it all the time. And so I think for me, in thinking about myself as a dance educator and thinking about the history of our people, I've always thought about what my mom taught me first and foremost. I have to give her a shout out, Sharayna Christmas, who forced me and made me do dance, right? But also, like, not centering decades, right, of Eurocentricity. Thinking about this is a place where we belong, and then thinking about, like, what are the other ways that we can kind of build ourselves up. Unfortunately, it is a flawed system of, dancers being broken down, right? So that you don't really have a space to build yourself up if you're not doing the work yourself. Like, you don't get a lot of, that's a good time dude, that's a good, there's no affirmations. And so I had to really do a lot of unlearning as I got older, as I became an educator, to figure out how to create that balance and how to offer that grace. Because that's not something that, dare I say, I thought was even necessary, right? It's like, dance is hard, life is hard. persevere, you push through, you get through it, right? But when you think about being a young person, a young black person in this context, in Harlem, you know, in Baltimore, wherever, you know, you're already facing those things. So to face that within an institution is really difficult. And then when you're trying to go out there and get a job, let's say dance, or you're trying to apply mostly for like summer ballet intensives, like Joffrey had one, New York City Ballet had one. You know, you're told those things and you're not prepared. So for me, it was about thinking about how to balance that in my work and also unlearn some of the things that I was accustomed to. You know,
so let me go to Jerrell, because what Sharayna has just expressed is really what compelled you to create this body of work. Can you, for those who haven't joined us before, give us a little background in terms of what inspired you to create this exhibition?
Absolutely. First of all, women definitely go first, right? But the one behind you, after you saying all that, Sharayna, I'm just going to embarrass myself. But anyway, no. Seriously, my daughter was the inspiration for this entire series. You all may know that. My daughter is Jerrell Gibbs. She's actually dancing right now. We experienced how critical and, well, firsthand how critical and, what's the word? How do I say it? Demeaning ballet can be towards black women, black girls. Tried to get her into a program last year here in Baltimore City specifically, and Sheila and I, my wife, Reagan's mother, we dropped Reagan off to audition for the program. It was about a 4-hour audition. We left her there, came back, spoke with the instructor. The instructor said Reagan was doing a great job. She was technically sound. She informed us that she actually did better than a lot of the students in the class. Yet they thought it would be a problem for her to take this class because of her ankle structure. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, she's been, at the time Reagan was 14, she's 15 now. She had been dancing for 10 years. And that's the first time I've ever heard it from anybody. So, in the moment, you know, I wanted to react, but at the same time I thought to myself, like, this isn't the way to respond. How I was, you know, like, responding emotionally at that time wasn't going to be the solution to the problem. And it wasn't going to set a great example for her. So, my wife and I took some time to kind of figure out how we wanted to approach it. Sent an email, had a little dialogue back and forth with them, and then came up with the idea to do the show.
And, you know, in our meetings and discussions about this body of work, you said it was important for people who experience this to know that it's not just a father advocating for his daughter and validating her, but it's a black man advocating for black women. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my biggest advocates have been black women. You know, most of the men in my family aren't really present, and if they are present, it's not, I think, the presence necessary to really like hold down that position as a man, as a father figure. So the black women in my family have kind of stood in, you know, and I know what it meant for me. You know, I know exactly how them advocating, them pushing me forward, them putting me in positions to succeed has helped me get to where I am today, and how important that validation is. So doing that for my daughter, being present for her, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, you know, wanting to be in her life so that she has a solid foundation, not just as a father-daughter relationship, but, you know, like it's a big deal to have someone validating and advocating for you that you love and trust, you know, because when you step outside in this world and you meet people like what she did last year, it could literally derail your whole future, you know, if you're not like equipped and you haven't had people pouring into you. And that's why I think what you do, Sharayna, is so important, because we need more of us in these spaces to uplift our young community so that they know, like, look, you're going to go out there, you're going to be judged, but at the end of the day, you know who you are because you have been taught from day one who you are, and nobody can take that from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Throughout the PowerPoint presentation, which Kai created and it's so beautifully done, she has juxtaposed images of Sharayna, you know, her dance performances, and then Jerrell with your paintings. So I'm going to go back because to the beginning of the PowerPoint because you mentioned the work that Sharayna is doing. So I'm going to go back to that, but just so our audience understands the visuals here. But I want to go back because you are doing some creative and wonderful and impactful work in the community. Talk to us a little bit about your programs.
Yeah. So I started Rainbow Dance Studio when I first graduated from Oregon, so shout out to Oregon. That's how I came to Baltimore. And I was volunteering teaching at the Druid Hill YMCA. And I didn't have any anticipation. I didn't have any anticipation of having a dance school. I just wanted to volunteer. I said, this reminds me of Harlem. This reminds me of like where I grew up. So I started to teach in that way. And then from that, I've, you know, came encounter with the Lake Center, which is obviously a staple here in the city. And I went from 10 students in 1 year, or I had like a 3-month, because I was so young, I was like 21, 22, but so I had like 3-month sessions to like 50, right? And then 50 to like 100, and then hundreds of young people, 1,000, you know, over 1,000 people coming to the show. So it was very overwhelming for somebody, of course, in their 20s. But for me, I thought about how I was raised. Like I have to go back to the way that I was raised with my mother. So it's really interesting when Jerrell is talking about having an advocate, but I think that what really stands out for me is you as the father and daughter. Like that letter that you wrote, I wish I had, right? So when I think about the ways in which I came to this work, I thought about what young people need. And now that I've been doing it for over 20 years, I can say that it's an offering to my younger self. Because I did have a dance studio, right? I went to a prestigious ballet school, right? But then I thought about what else do young people need, right? So I was in very deep study in my 20s. I'm studying Pearl Primus, God rest her soul, Catherine Dunham, and I thought I wanted to be an anthropologist, so I started reading all of the books. And I said, well, what would it look like if I traveled with young people around the world? So again, being in your 20s doing that, maybe I wouldn't suggest that, right? But I had this audacious nerve, which I know most people that don't like still have, but I had it, right? I had no funding. We didn't get our first funding probably until 10 years in. But the first year we decided to study in St. Anne, Jamaica, and so we studied the Mugunaj movements of Queen Annie, and then we traveled down to the next year to Costa Rica and Limon. And so what was really important about taking young dancers, particularly at that time out of Baltimore City, it wasn't about dance. It was about making sure that they can see themselves in these cultural spaces. I wanted them to see the genesis of how movement for Black people releases something in us. It builds a whole nother set of competencies that no one can touch, you know, so that untouchable, you know, perseverance that we were really building was, and also for myself, I learned a lot about myself. So from that, a lot of the other programs came, right? And so we have been able to, like 2022 is when we did like our final like strategic survey. We were able to serve like consistently over 1,800 families. So a lot of my young people that are no longer young people, I see like, hey, Miss Christmas, everybody, at least one person's family member, I would run into somebody that danced at Rainfall. So Rainfall Dance Studio dances the way that it was all brought together. And again, like for Black folks, you know, being able to move their bodies, right? Because you go into an institution and you're told your ankles are not strong enough. And I can talk about that technicality later. But You're told your ankles are not strong enough. You're told that you're not lean enough. You're told that you're not the right shape. Then you get discouraged and you no longer move your bodies. Because when I go into spaces and black people not dancing, I say, what's going on here? Because this is not making sense. So again, with me building an institution, Muse 360, intergenerational, right? Music being intergenerational, it's important that people know that this is something that is in their possession. This is something that they don't have to do at a very low level. Because when I first started getting grants, they wanted me to redefine how I talked about my work. Like, is it community crafts? Is it, is it community dance? And I'm like, we're a community, but it's high level. It's high quality, right? And what that requires, dare I say, all of the institutions, I know do different things, but I had town hall meetings with my parents. So I explained to them the ethos that I come from. I come from Dance in Harlem. I come from Alvin Ailey. If your child wants to go to a BSA or they want to go study in New York for the summer, let's prepare them, right? We have to kind of work together to prepare parents just as much as we prepare young people, especially in Baltimore. It's not that we're not birthing beautiful, creative people, but I do think that there's a lot more power that we can do once we start organizing ourselves to understand how do we combat and confront these institutions. So like Muse 360 was kind of born out of that, and it's been, it's evolved. It's, my young people are here today, many young people, but my Young Artist Archival Fellowship. So I don't just work in dance, right? So with the Study Abroad program, I work with young people that are painters, theater artists, photographers, videographers, and then I thought about the importance of the archive, and so now we have the Young Artist Archival Fellowship, working with young artists 18 and up. So yeah, it's just an evolution, but still the same mission, to radically, develop young people at the highest level in the creative fields. So.
Jerrell, I want to swing to you now because it's my understanding that Reagan was a student.
Yes, Reagan.
Yes,
Reagan
and so tell me about in her formative years what it meant for her to be under Sharayna's instruction.
Yeah, I think what Sharayna said was, you hit it on the head. Like, there's a level of critique that's necessary when it comes to developing your craft, if you want to develop it to the capacity that like Reagan wants to moving forward, right? So her being in that environment and understanding like the foundation of what she was doing, what's important, why it's important, how to do it properly, the technical side of everything, the details that really matter. Because that's what it is, like, everybody can do the thing that they do good, right? But what separates you is the little details that most people aren't really trying to take the time to learn how to do, or to get better at, right? That's what she was offered, at Rainbow, And again, it was like, it was critical for her to be in that type of environment, because where she was coming from, it was more of a raw experience. And, if you want to continue to grow at something, you got to continue to challenge yourself and fail. So being in that environment definitely helped.
So I want to bring Alex into the conversation now because we talked about, that you all basically are athletes. So a lot of people may not know that you, like, football player, and so we talked about how the structure and the discipline from your athletic training has prepared you to create your nonprofit organizations, bringing those skill sets into, to what you are able to do now in terms of mentoring young people, the discipline that you bring into your art practice. So Alex is a sports guy, so we got into this muse about, oh my gosh, how important that all is, and so he just has some really great ideas and questions to pose to the two of you.
Yeah, well, first, I'm not an athlete, but I enjoy watching sports, and I don't know how many of you enjoy watching it, but when we watch sports, we're seeing the best of what's left. And it's littered. I mean, only 12 players on a basketball team. Imagine how many Division I people, Division I, don't make the cut. And it's littered with people that need support systems. So when we were talking about it, I was thinking about your letter and how depending on who you have around you, will depend on how you go forward. And then also being detached from the situation. I'm not a dancer, not an athlete, but just from an observer standpoint, one of the things I thought was, well, this is life. You know, this is what happens to everyone. When you start at the top of the funnel, there's a lot of people. And as you get to that bottom part, all of a sudden, that's where the critique comes in. And it's very critical at that point. And so my thought was, well, you know, there are athletes out there. This is what happens. Even though I didn't play sports professionally or anything like that, I played it when I was in school, grade school. You know, you kind of play and play and play until you realize that you can't play, and these people over here can play. So I didn't need that sort of support system because I never made it to that funnel part. And I think, you know, things like your daughter, they got to a point inside that funnel. And you obviously went through that funnel. And there's a lot more critique and a lot more, I guess it could be, depending on how you interpret it, it could be pain that comes on the other side of that, you know, and depending on your support system. So, having said all that, you know, I was thinking about you, Jerrell, when Myrtis said, well, you know, a football player. I was like, wow. So, you know, like at what point did you reach going through that top of the funnel or into the funnel? And then how did you handle it, and how do you translate that moment when you heard what happened to Reagan?
Turn this mic on first. I'm good. I got it. All right, cool. Well, I think for me, I found out that I wasn't going to play professional football when I was in college, and it wasn't like a hard thing for me to swallow. You know, it wasn't a hard pill for me to swallow. One, our daughter was just born, so like my dreams of the NFL aspirations were kind of dwindling because I'm like, bro, we got a kid, like I gotta get a job at this point to take care of my family. So there was that, and then, but you also get to a point where you understand like what your calling is, and that your purpose is not always what you think it is. Like sometimes you're put in certain places, community situations to do a certain thing at a certain time for a very specific reason. And I think something that you touched on earlier was like, all of these people go through these funnels, right, in whatever field, area they're in. And then what happens to all of the people that don't make it though, you know? And that's the part that I think Sharayna and I was actually talking about a few weeks ago, and I think Myrtis was in the conversation as well. It's like, what happens with everybody else? This is where the community aspect come in. You know, like this is where like programs and having institutions within our communities that uplift and continue to pour into those people who may not go to that top. But it's not to say that you can't go to the top of another field or the top of something else in that same industry. Like, there's so many different avenues in football alone. It doesn't have to be like going to the league. You can be a coach, you know? You can be a youth coach. You can be an analyst. You know, like there's so many different opportunities. But one, if you're not exposed to it, you just don't know, right? I didn't know about being a professional artist until I saw Jeffrey Kent being a professional artist. He's an artist here in Baltimore. I was like 28. You know what I mean? Like, and I drew as a kid, but I didn't even see that until I was almost 30 years old. You know, so like the exposure is important. Being around the right people who can expose you, first of all, is important. And then once you get into that space and you understand like, okay, these are the opportunities. Now I need to find the right people that can help me kind of like foster the talents that I have to continue to move forward. Like that's literally what happened to me. When I got around Jeffrey, I saw him living the life that I wanted to live. And I'm like, that's another black man doing what I want to do. Like, I can do this. So I just kept doing it. And he was like, you know what you should do? You should apply to MICA without an undergrad degree. And I did it. And I got in. You know what I mean? Like, I got into a graduate school program, no formal training, in a year that they were only accepting 6 students, bro. Like, come on.
So let me ask you a question. Like, what year was that?
This was it 2018?
2018?
Yeah, 2018, yeah.
Because, just for fun fact, Jeffrey Kent was one of the first artists that we had at an art show here when we opened in 2006. So to hear Jeffrey's name come up like that is very just fascinating. That's really, really great.
That's community. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so discipline is something that I always talk about across the board. It really doesn't have much to do with, it's not only about dance. It's interesting to be called an athlete because of course there's the argument about like, well, who's stronger, a ballet dancer or a football player?
Look at this.
I know.
That's athletic.
And the funny thing is, I mean, I guess I'll put it out there, but I was actually pregnant with little Bashi when I performed that. Yeah. I was in the best shape of my life, thank God, and I had a home birth, so it all worked out. But in any case, so maybe the discipline all does work, right? So I think that for Black folks, period, I never think about it in terms of a funnel, and because I did not want to dance. I did not want to. First of all, I wanted to be, dare I say, outside. If you go to dance at a Harlem, 152nd Amsterdam, there's a basketball court next door. And my mother was strict. She's the sweetest grandmother now. But my mother was so strict. I used to write her letters like, Mom, I'm in middle school now. I started dance at 3, and I did not leave until I came to Morgan, okay? And I could not understand why I had to be so committed to this. It was not about art commission. It wasn't about all. We had opportunities to meet friends. We had opportunities to do things with Essence. I mean, that did not matter, right? But what mattered was my mother making sure that I committed to something. So what does that look like for my daughter who says, you know what, Mom, I'm going to Morgan. I did not dance for 4 years at Morgan. They asked me, I decided to study finance. So I used to work on Wall Street, some of you will know that. And I remember interviewing as a Morganite alongside other HBCUs. And I had on a gray suit, not a black suit, so they made a comment about that. And I was like, okay, now I look back like, oof. But anyway, I interviewed, I think it was with Goldman Sachs. I don't know exactly which firm that I would work at today, but when I started talking about me doing ballet my entire life, something like really turned on inside of me. And also, I knew I was standing out in a different way. Because what that told them, right, and what it also told me is that the discipline of my mind, the commitment that I have shown over the last, 3 to 18 was 16 years, or 17, well, 17 is when I graduated, but still danced a little bit in that summer, really was something that I should hold on to as a skill that now can be transferable. So at that time, no, you could not tell me that I was going to have a ballet school or work with young people at all. But that discipline was something that I knew many of us lack. So I know that we can say like only 9% or this funnel, but the discipline, the organization, like for Black folks to organize themselves, right? That's why I have Muse 360. It's not about them being the best dancer. So I knew that I changed that with Muse, right? With Muse 360 and Ring Full. It's not about them being the best artist, right? It's not about being the most like well-spoken, but it's about them being good people that know how to organize themselves, know how to hold themselves accountable, know how to build that self-awareness. So for me, my quote-unquote success really translates from those experiences. But my mother was also an organizer in Harlem. So the activism comes in. So I believe that when you talk about support systems, and so I don't think it's that much of a binary. I know for a fact that young people, they need a support system. So they need a support system beyond whatever the development of what that is. Because if we're developing Jerrell at a young age for football, but he's hungry, or when he goes home, the house is not safe, okay? When he goes to college, yes, he might have got a scholarship, but he can never come home because there's so many other things that we can do if we're building up these institutions, teaching young people and their parents and their community that we're going to be organized, disciplined, and we're going to do it the best way that no one else can do. So like, because I have that kind of fire in my spirit, I had the town hall meetings with the parents to talk about discipline. So you can imagine, I got a lot of pushback too. Discipline, you're too hard, you're too this, right? So then, but again, if we're thinking about our North Star, if you're telling me that your daughter wants to go to BSA, like how can I support that? And then we also talk about the realities of that. And we also talk about the other options, right? And the other options are Ring Full Dance Studio. About 60%, 70% of my dance teachers, they started with me about 19. They all stayed with me for at least 8 to 10 years. Some of my young people, like this summer, Naima, she goes to Spelman, she started with me at 3, she's coming back to run our summer Freedom School. You know, so there's other options. And I think that, like what Jerrell is saying, also it's not about like the age and where you start, and you know, especially if you're a black male dancer, you can start really late and be like working on New York City Ballet. But it's more so about like how you organize yourself. You also mentioned that you had, you know, you had grading. So being, you know, like you said, you ain't got time for that. Those life experiences as black people, we need to turn those into other things. And so when you come into an institution like Micah, you dealing with it in a totally different way. And he and I actually, we did a show at Ida's Table when I was the curator there. And I remember I came to the studio. And also like just back to Reagan is very disciplined, but again, like Jerrell and I had very intimate conversations and Sheila about what it was like for Reagan to be at Rainbow at that time. So I don't just say, okay, you come register and dance. It's like, let's talk about it. Like, what do you need? Okay, what's going on, right? So it requires a lot from everybody involved. But I think that if we shift our ideology around like this percent getting in and this, you know, they go here and they go here. I think if our institutions shift that paradigm, because I can't speak to the white institutions, that's not, but for me, right, for you all, right, thinking about ways that you can bring folks in is really, that's what's important, because, you know, they could be administrators here, right? There's so many things that we can do as a community. So yes, when I think about discipline, I love it, and it's very necessary. It's very, very necessary.
No, it's so good and refreshing to hear, you know, how you look at it. Because from an observer standpoint, you know, like I said, we see what's on the back end, not thinking about developments along the way. But just one question though, so if you had, so you're really into development, if you have someone that, you know, was determined to be a ballet dancer, right, and you've been there, and you could look at the person and honestly say, that's probably not going to happen, how would you handle that?
That's a good question. I mean, I have had that many times, obviously. So, of course, a lot of the young people, the dancers that I had, they were, you know, I talked to their parents too, right? So I think a lot of it has to do also with the teachers that I'm bringing in, right? I never deterred any of my students from not applying for the things that they want to apply for. I'm very realistic about the discipline, what I'm not seeing. We used to do extensive evaluation, so a lot of dance schools don't do that. We did an oral, I mean, I know people are like, oh my gosh, but oral evaluation, physical evaluation, right? So that they can also be more self-aware. And I don't think that it's still important to dream, right? But then it's also important to expose black young people and people, period, to other forms of dance, right? So Forces of Nature is a ballet company in New York, but it uses mostly African movement, right? Urban Bush Woman, you have Ronald K. Brown. That's the kind of dance that I actually do now, right? So I'm not gonna, and actually, let me just speak for myself. I would not be in the New York City Ballet, and I don't want to be in the New York City Ballet. But if I had not been exposed to Alvin Ailey, which is kind of how I started my curriculum at Rainfall using Horton technique, which is not founded by Lester Horton, was a white modern dancer, but Alvin Ailey kind of created something for the black body that we could really adhere to, that's still disciplined, still high level. So again, once you expose young people to all those things, they just start dreaming all of the multiple different things. But if they go to a school like maybe BSA, or if they go to, you know, Peabody, they're thinking there's only one North Star, which is to be this ballet school, ballet dancer. So my son is actually doing football, okay? I don't love all of the things that we have to do. I got a lot of nerve. But we just had, my son's 15, so we just had a conversation about discipline. And it was hard, I don't know if I got through, but I said, I'm planting seeds in your head. And he was like, Mom, what seeds you put in? I'm like, okay, let me go back, right? But I realized that, I need to become, that he needs more of a community. That's what I wanted to say. Because like, I don't have that experience being an athlete in that way. So, as a parent, I reach out to his coach. I talk to the flag football team, I talk to the people at the school, like I talk to my brother, you know, other folks that have been athletes to support him, because I could see he really wants it. But he did say he was going to the NFL, and I did tell him that the likeliness of that might not happen. And I told him why, because I wanted him to have an honest conversation with him. And he was pissed. He came back and he said, "Ma, you don't believe in me?" He said that to me. And I said, "Bashi, you know I love you and I believe in you, but I want to share something with you. I want you to do your work. I want you to do your homework, right, around like what it looks like for NFL, you know, black NFL players." So we got to a good place, but you know, and like I said, I think that the discipline part, parents being really radically honest and understanding what these dancers are going through, what these athletes are going through, then you can support better, you know.
I want to say something to that point. I think sometimes too, it's good to like get them to understand like the reason why they want to do something. Like, why do you want to go to the NFL? You know, like, do you love football that much to where as though you want to sacrifice your body at that level for that long? You know what I mean? Actually, it's a long time while you're doing it, but in terms of longevity in your lifespan, it's very short. You come out of it an old man, like literally, and you're going to be living a long time after that. I mean, we're talking 35, 36. You're like considered 80, 90, you know, like no offense. That's just real life. And you feel that way, you know? But why do you want to do it? You know, and there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to live a different lifestyle. Okay, cool. There are other ways to do that though. Football isn't the only way. If you sit down and come up with a plan to do the thing that you want to do, you can literally make that happen without doing something that you think is necessary. You know, like, football isn't the only way. You know, like for me, like I said, speaking to the whole funnel idea or whatever, like, there's so many different avenues within these different professions, these different crafts, these different places that we want to go and things that we want to do. There are a lot of different access points, but if you're not exposed to them, and if they aren't aware of it, it's just like, oh no, I want to do this because this is the thing that I see everybody doing, you know. But there's so many other options out there.
So, Jerrell, Sharayna talked about the community, the importance of community and building community around her son and the community that surrounded her coming up, growing up as a dancer. What community have you and Sheila built or are building around Reagan, a community of support beyond the two of you?
That's a good question. Okay, there we go. That's a great question. We try to surround Reagan with a community of people who are like-minded in a way, but also think differently from us. I think that's important. How we do that, it varies. You know, because what I've learned is you kind of go with where your child goes, and then you kind of find the people in the spaces that they're doing the thing that they're doing. Like in school, same thing. You try to find parents, children that you can kind of relate to. You don't have to be the same, right? But there has to be like core values that make sense for us to kind of like continue to work the relationship. Like the relationships are important to us. I don't know if I have a direct answer to your question, but I do think like through our engagement with Reagan and the things that she does, like we're fully committed to whatever she does. Like dance practice, we're sitting in the car for 2 hours, you know, just waiting for her to come out. You know, we could be doing so many other things, but being there, being present, you know, we know like, okay, who's coming in, who's going out, who are the parents that staying too, you know, because you can build relationships with them. But yeah, it's really about like her day-to-day and getting to know the people within her day-to-day, people that she interacts with, people that she meets, and trying to like work in that capacity.
So I want to ask a question about the future, because you're working with youth, you're creating work as was shared in our past program that's going to be informed by, well, you're changing your trajectory. Well, I'm going to ask you to share with us, rather than when I try to interpret or reinterpret what you said, share with us now the new path and direction that your work is taking and why.
So I think it's less of a change in the direction. It's just a visual, it's more of a visual change than a contextualization of something new. What I'm painting now and what I'm creating art centered around now is the same thing that I was painting and talking about years ago, when I first started. But now it just looks very intentional, very specific about my culture, about the experiences that I've had, and the influences that have played a significant role in how I see myself as a black man, how I see myself as a father, the experiences that I've lived through, the things that have molded and shifted and changed my life, whether it been the early death of my father when I was 7 years old. He was killed when he was 27. A lot of these, and this is big too, because this is why communities are so important. My life and most of our lives have been impacted by our childhood experiences, right? And we're still working through something that has happened in our childhood, whether it's good or bad. You know, it influences who we grow up to be. And what I want to do now visually is present children as the forefront of my works, because I believe that it offers an opportunity for people to, one, be less defensive about the topics. It's an opportunity for you to just see it for what it is and then kind of like ease your way into it. I think children offer that opportunity. Like when you hear children say, they say children say the darndest things, but usually children saying truth. You know, it's truth to what they're saying, right? And you can tolerate it because the child is saying it. You know what I mean? If I was saying it to you, you'd be ready to fight. But yeah, it's really about the visual language now, right? And it's about presenting children as the forefront. And it's what I've always been talking about.
I love it. I think in the past, most of your, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of the work was influenced by photographs from, relatives known and unknown, because some of them may have passed, and that really was the inspiration. But now you're bringing your voice to represent your life experiences as opposed to the relatives who were portrayed in those photographs. Is that correct?
Well, it's a combination. Like I'm still using the photographs as the source material for the works. But again, like now I'm just really centered. My mind has shifted from, at first when I was in graduate school, I knew that I wanted to paint the photos that I saw in my aunt's photo album, right? Because it was a representation of what I grew up knowing, seeing. And when I make paintings, when I create art, I wanted to come from a personal space because I can really get my truth into it, and I can, I don't know, that's where the energy comes from, right? Living it and experiencing it. So when I'm showing you my family, I'm showing you experiences that I can recall, or I'm talking about things that I know personally because I lived it or someone close to me has. So it initially started as an opportunity for me to show my family because I value my family, right? And I think we don't need to step outside of our communities to get validation. You know what I mean? Like, I love my family, they're important, so I'm gonna paint it, right? And now look what happened. But so I'm painting my family, right? And that's the source material. And that was the beginning. And the more I did it, the more I started to understand, okay, what is it that I'm really after? And when I got to it, it was like, oh, I'm painting about my childhood. I'm painting about things that have impacted me that still have some sort of hold on me to this day, whether it's how I dress, whether it's how I talk, whether it's the food I eat, you know what I mean? Like all of these things have been a part of my DNA based on my human experience with my family as a kid. I'm still mining through it, right? So that's really where it comes from.
Yes, I love that. So let's talk about, and you may have touched on it in what you just said, but I hope to challenge you in a slightly different way in talking about the future. I mean, as an administrator of youth and as a mentor and influencer, and both of you as parents, and your work is rooted in history, your history at the Dance Theater of Harlem, yours looking at the history of your family. So, and of course, visual narratives is what inspires and what you're bringing to the forefront. Your performances and research. So how do you think about archiving the present, all right? The present of your work in the contemporary form, being of the moment, what you're experiencing, what your daughter has experienced, and as part of a futuristic practice as you look forward in terms of the legacy that you're creating through both of the work that you do, yours with youth and yours in the work and the visuals that people who collect your work will live with, those stories that you're leaving and telling, and the impression that they make, the impact that they're having in the homes of the individuals that are living with them. You know, when we think about the future, where do you see that impact? As part of your legacy, what is it that you maybe perhaps want people to know, and the impression that you're making in your respective practices?
So I believe that I'm always thinking about the next generation. So, and I'm also thinking about an intergenerational pursuit. So me, you know, I'm only an administrator because I have to be, because I don't have someone on the show here. But in any case, but I also think about what Jerrell is saying, which is really, really important, right? The archiving, and not I don't want to speak for you, but in experiencing his work and experiencing, you know, creative practitioners, archivists that are taking where we come from and they're bringing it back to the forefront. Like the word archive is on everybody's tip of everybody's tongue, and so we get annoyed with that, but it's also really important. And so what I'm trying to do with the next generation is to get them to start to think about themselves within their life, right, within their work. This is an offering. The work that I do is an offering to my younger self. I'm hoping that the young people can even right now start to provide offerings to themselves. Not only by the work that they do, right? Because a lot of times with artists in some institutions, they're teaching you to go outside yourselves. They're like, paint this and paint that, or take a photo of this and take a photo. It's like, do you know yourself? In the history of our people, whether it's particularly in Baltimore, the history of Baltimore, where, you know, a large amount of black folks were free. Do you know that? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you when you're taking a class on, with my good comrade here, Dr. Jessica Johnson? You know, she works with me, so, you know, the future, the world building that we're trying to do, learning about what slavery did, right? Learning about the complexities and the layers that are built in who we are as human beings, right? So that is like a future building. For me, it's not, with my work, it's not just about like the work that's being created. Right now, I have transitioned, so I don't have the dance school, but I opened up the 360 house, which is by Morgan, which is a house that I own, and I've birthed many different things. So like, for example, this summer, we are doing a Black Film Studies Freedom School for teenagers between the ages of 14 and 18. So when you think about, even though that's the past, right? Freedom schools are, you know, systems of the past, right? But when you think about the importance of a freedom school, it's them teaching, you learn different skills. So what can they learn by reading Bell Hooks' Touch the Earth, and then working with a beekeeper to then build a garden and then go to harvest bees, right? What did they learn by studying Joyce J. Scott and speaking to her and learning about femage and learning about assemblage and learning to use your hands? So like, and then also with the exhibition that we're doing, so with young people, we have a fellowship for artists 18 and up, where we are actually partnered with the Afro Archive, Afro Charities Archive, shout out to Savannah, and also the legacy of the Afro, over 130 years old. But a lot of unprocessed archives are living at the Maryland State Archive, right? So what does it look like for young people that are in high school to go in and work with the archives? Because when you apply to a lot of these fellowships and a lot of these other programs, right? So when we're thinking about what work we're creating, it breaks barriers when they're able to go and work in the archive. They don't have, you know, a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, a doctorate. They haven't written it, right? But they're able to touch these things and then start to think about, like, what kind of world can they build? And then me as a parent, I'm just a prayer day, I tell you. My child definitely challenges me. I'm like, hey, gosh. But what I do know to be true is that as parents, because my mother, you know, she had books, she had things, she exposed me to art. My first library, from my recollection, was Schomburg, right? And where I learned about the Haitian Revolution. So I'm hoping that we're planting seeds for our young people, for our children, right? That they can continue, you know, to move that forward. But like I said, just along the same lines as what Jerrell is saying, what I'm hoping for a future, right? Again, is for our people to go back to learn about who they are. Speak to the eldest person in your family. You know, who are you, right? What are the things that you're allow yourself to be disciplined away from also the technological propaganda that also influence, because those are the things that I'm up against, especially the young people, right? I'm up against that, right? So it's like, how do I think about curriculum, programs, experiences that don't, you know, we don't take away technology, but we figure out how to build these worlds. And so again, bringing it back to like who we are, the intimacies of who we are as Black people, how we treat one another. One of the questions that I get asked all the time is like, what's the future of Black folks, or what's the future of young people? My thing is, it's not that complex. It's how we treat one another on a basic level. It's how we interact. It's how we treat one another. It's how we allow for the flexibility. It's how we allow for the irregularity of, like you said, you know, hey, I'm 28. I'm about to be a professional person. Oh no, you're too old to do that. No, it's about allowing for all of those cues. I had listened to a lecture by Fred Wilton this morning, and he was talking about Jay Dilla, who was a digressive soul, but he was talking about Jay Dilla taking this beat machine that I don't know exactly the name, but disabling one aspect of the beat machine that corrects your mistakes. So taking off the autocorrect. Now, if anybody knows Jay Dilla and all of the work that he has done, it works, right? So what does that look like when we build worlds where we can disable this propaganda and this autocorrect? We can challenge one another to be uncomfortable, and a lot of times we do have a blueprint. So like I said, I'm really excited about the 360 House. I'm excited about the Black Freedom School that we're doing this summer for 14 and 18 young people. That's what I'm most excited about, and that's like the future that I'm trying to build. You know, so hope I answered the question.
Yeah, no, you did.
Hold your pedagogy.
Wow.
That's just my idea.
And for you, Jerrell?
Yeah, along the lines of what Sharayna said, I think for me, I'm doing it from a visual perspective. You know, I just want people to see what it looks like. What it looks like to value people that look like you, what it looks like to value your family, what it looks like to be comfortable and okay with your life, how the mundane activities of your life. Nothing that I paint about is extraordinary. It's just living, literally. And this is a complete timestamp of my life. And the people that I love are a part of that as well, right? So with that, I'm able to live the life that I want to live. That should tell you everything, you know? What's amazing to me is God does work, His most powerful work, through ordinary people, right? Ordinary people doing extraordinary things that make absolutely no sense, right? Nobody that's considered like on a high level as a human, they're not doing anything extravagant. Like, they don't. You know, it's always the people that just out of the community, you know what I mean? Like, nobody just know where they just came from, and they just doing all this extravagant stuff. And that's how I look at, obviously I'm not saying I'm God, but how I look at creating these works are from that same mentality. It's like my family, the photo album that my aunt left has offered me an opportunity to live the life that I want to live in a way that's true and honest to myself. I didn't have to go anywhere else to do it. I mean, my maternal side of the family is from Blackstone, Virginia. You know what I mean? Like, it's like not too far from Norfolk. She left me photo albums of us doing stuff at home, in the backyard, people coming over the house. I found like 10 photo albums in the basement and just started painting. I mean, this is us.
Yes.
You know, this is our, and somebody has to be able to like write the history, show the history, validate what's important to us. Like, we can't go outside of our community to look for validation. We're not going to get it. They don't understand it. They don't want to. You know what I mean? They don't need to. We don't need them. We don't. You know, like, everything that we need is here. It's within. It's in our communities. It's in yourself. It's in your home. Focus on that and you're good to go. And I think that's what I have to offer moving forward.
You know, I'm listening to you and thinking, as you're talking about your aunt and leaving those photo albums for you, that she was basically an archivist. You know, she preserved those images, those celebrations of your family, as you said, just the day-to-day life and joy that your family experienced. So I was thinking about her maybe in a different way, given the way in which you described the importance of those images that you now have. And then something else that you mentioned earlier was about how Jeffrey Kent influenced you and what became of that, coupled with those photographs. And now I want you to think about how you will then go on to influence others, and the two of you, the impact that you're making in a young person's or an older person's life as they experience your work and your legacy. So I wanted to turn the floor over to our audience and ask if there are any questions. And I do want to hear from some young people that are participating in, okay, don't let me call you out. You better volunteer and we'll point to you. All right, I think we got a volunteer. Oh, wait. Yeah, you're looking enthusiastic, so we're going to pick on you. So maybe you would like to share why being part of her programs, Sharayna's programs, is so important, or if you have a question.
Hi, my name is Angel. I'm a part of Miss Christmas's NGS fellowship. I guess I can do a little bit of both.
We love both.
So I guess I'll first talk about my experience within the program. One thing that I think was really important is, like, as a transplant, I'm originally from North Carolina. Coming here and like really attempting to expand like my community outside of my PWI and like really grow roots here, it was super important to like learn about the history of Baltimore, actually deeply connect with like we had access and got to connect with so many incredible people. Are we in 32? I think this is the 32nd interaction we've had. So it was just really incredible to like create such strong bonds, because I'm sure we've talked about this at length today. There's yes, the actual tangible skills that we're like developing, but also the growth as like an individual, like the hard conversations we've had about us as artists, but also like community members. It's been really transformative. But I guess my question is about archiving, and to go back to how you view this work in relation to the archive. like you're in a way both addressing these historic older images, but in a way like modernizing them and like bringing them back to like the present in a way that I think is really interesting, and I would love to hear you like expand on. Yeah.
I think what I strive to do is offer an opportunity for my children, the people that I know. It's really like, I'm always thinking about my daughter, right? And when I say I think about my daughter, I think about her specifically, but I also think about people and kids her age, right? They need to see things. They need to see themselves. My daughter needs to go to these spaces and see herself. Not just for the sake of just like, oh, you know, I see someone that looks like me in this space. That's important. But at the same time, it's like, specifically this body of work is an opportunity for her to understand that everything ain't sweet. Like, life is gonna slap you in the face at some point. You know what I mean? How do you get out of it though? How do you come out of that? It's the most important thing. And this is what the show was about. It was about exposing her to like real life in a way that I felt like she wasn't, like, she was able to go through it and experience real life, but it was still kind of guarded, because we can do that right now with her. You know, I can kind of still walk her through it. We did the show together. She came out of it triumphantly, you know what I mean? And she's not broken. It was an opportunity for her to grow. If she, and again, I'm not just talking about my daughter, but if a younger generation doesn't understand what it is to go through life and struggle sometimes, how can you get through anything moving forward? If you don't have an experience with it, you can't do it moving forward. It just don't work. So you have to see it, you gotta live it, and you have to have the people willing to work through and walk you through the thing, right? And I think that's what my work offers outside of just like representational paintings. It's like an opportunity for you to see real life, the good and the bad sometimes, and like how you can work through it, how you can live through it, how you can champion yourself moving forward, how you can find your community, your people that love you and want to pour into you, how we can work together to do this thing. It just, I don't know, it's just like an opportunity for all that, in my opinion.
So Jerrell, you just broke that down so beautifully, and thank you. Because in the past we talked about how beautiful and tender these images are. But underneath the canvas, there is a deep message about self-empowerment, coming through a difficult time and persevering and having a loving community around you to bring you through. And you talked also about the foundation by which, you know, our children, they should be able to rely on us for that, so that when there's that tough moment and disappointing moment, they have the foundation to stand on. They know that they are loved and they're validated in the home. And I also wanted you to share with us, because we didn't touch upon the title of the piece, because God and your belief in God is so important. It's the center of your family's foundation. And I wanted you to share what inspired the title.
Yeah, Psalms 139, I think. Fifthly and wonderfully made. What I wanted Reagan to understand, and again, this is not just for my daughters, for other young black women, other young black boys, you know what I mean? However you identify, this is an opportunity for you to like literally look at this and experience it and understand that no matter what you go through outside of the community that you've built, first and foremost, the person that, the one that means the most said that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. So everything that you hear outside of these walls don't even matter. You know what I mean? Like, because you're gonna hear a lot to deter you from doing whatever it is that you're after. I mean, my family even almost deterred me from doing what I'm doing. And now they looking at me like, oh, like, you know, I'm like, where were you at? When I was struggling. You know? So like, at the core of it, it's like, understand who you really matter to. And understand that he said, you were fearfully and wonderfully made. Nothing else matters. Just live in that.
Any other questions?
I have the mic.
Can you please stand?
Oh, stand?
Yes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm part of Ms. Sharayna's program, fellowship, and I guess I have a question for you, Ms. Christmas. You stated that when you went to Morgan, you stopped dancing for like the whole 4 years. I was wondering what made you, or at least what characteristics of dance made you fall back in love with it, or at least made you want to take it up again?
That is a good question. So the way that I came back to dance was that I started volunteering, like I mentioned, at the YMCA. That's my skill. So, you know, one of the programs that Muse 360 has is Spark of Genius, which is derived from the preface of The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He talks about your spark of genius. At the time, I didn't realize that, right? But I was like, well, I can teach dance, you know? And so when I came back to that, I had this beautiful studio. They have a beautiful studio at Jerrell YMCA. Hopefully they still have it. I haven't been in a while. And then I had a dance company, and I was dancing in my 20s all around every open mic. And I realized I loved to be able to tell my own stories through dance. So I had the classes, and then I had a dance company. And I think, and I believe, as I'm reflecting, what made me fall back in love with it was the ability to be free and use the music that I wanted to. So if you have taught at Rainfall, if you have gone to Rainfall, the young people have been there, I didn't use like the typical classical music, right? So I was choreographing to Nina Simone, and we did a piece to a Mary Baraka's poem on the Roots album. One of the pieces that I wanted to share, it was a song called Sun Moon Child. That was how we closed out our 19 years, you know, in Baltimore. But yeah, so the music, you know, that interplay, right, like being able to move my body and move other dancers. I was, like I said, I was in my 20s. I remember we did 4 women, and I have that, hopefully, I don't know if y'all probably saw it, but it's on the fridge. But it's like we all had, you know, we had our all black outfits because that's what we could afford at the time. Any dancers that start music, we're all black for everything. It's like a wide pant and it's like a crop top or something. But because I was able to choreograph freely, which I never had been able to do before that, never, you would not choreograph, right? That's what brought me back to loving dance. You know, Frodo Brown, which was still I listen to that all the time. Anybody that comes to the Muse, you know, I would pump some Frodo Brown. It's what happened. And I choreographed to all of that. I remember we danced at the aquarium. I can't remember exactly what the celebration was, but we used their UK remix album. We danced the whole entire thing. I mean, the song was like 9 minutes. The parents was like, what the heck? We was out there doing, you know. So then that's when I really fell in love with Afro-modern and house music was something that my father, always, if anybody met my dad, he always dances. Galerie Christmas, shout out to you. But yeah, I mean, house music, the music is what really, you know, inspires me. And then last thing I'll say is my spirituality. I think, definitely, I believe, similar to Jerrell, like even my films that I do now are rooted in, you know, my ancestral practices, right? Some of the Orishas. Also thinking about, like, how did I get to this work? Like, who told me to do this? Only God, only the universe, only man. Because this is not something if you ask me at 21, I'd be like, I'm not working with those young people, I'm not doing this. But when you allow yourself to be a vessel, you allow yourself to be open, you know, and whether it's a fight or not, these things will be birthed. I do miss choreographing. I miss teaching a little bit. Teaching is a lot, but I do miss choreographing. And so I started doing some choreo labs, and then I choreograph for my films now. But again, that freedom of movement, and then really getting Black people just to move their bodies. We need to move this energy around, right? So like I feel like the thing that brought me to it in the beginning, in the early, is now brought me back to it now. Now that I don't have the practice of the dance school every single day, because we would be there 4 or 5 times a week. Now it's different and it looks different, but it's still there, that love. Yeah. So.
We have another question.
Hello. My name is Elena. I am a fellow with NGS, and I had a question for Jerrell and Miss Christmas. I guess Miss Christmas, you're in a unique position because you're constantly working with evolving groups of youth, but you're working with like your daughter and you're working with like family images, so you two are kind of in different positions, and through conversation with I guess my family, because I am a young artist, so I've been in a position to have a very supportive family, and as I've evolved, they've been supportive with me, but now that I'm in college, our lives are kind of not as intersected as they were before. So I was wondering, how do you guys see your practices evolving as the groups of people that you work with evolve?
Well, I think I'll use my graduate school experience as an example. Stepping outside of like my family, while I was in graduate school, obviously I had to, you know. We all know Micah is a, we call it PWI. That's right, right? Okay. All right, just making sure I was right. So.
You want to interpret that for people who don't know Micah?
Oh, it's a predominantly white institution.
Yeah.
That's simple. I mean, it's all good. Like, they've invested in themselves, and we need to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't mad. Do you think? But so I'm in this space with my cohort, and I loved all of them. That was my crew, but I understood that what I had to bring to the table was different, and I wasn't like, because I knew that my story was valuable and my experience was valuable, and I didn't need validation from the outside. I didn't need validation from my professors. I didn't need validation from my cohorts. I was okay with listening to them because because I knew there was going to be a level of engagement that offered both of us an opportunity to grow, right? So when I step out into different spaces, I'm optimistic, I'm open, I'm willing. You know, I think you can kind of lose sight of your future and how you can move forward by like literally locking yourself in and boxing yourself in. I think growing and stepping outside of yourself and putting yourself in different spaces and different environments can be a blessing if used properly, you know? But you gotta understand who you are. You know, like, you gotta be able to take what's necessary and leave all of the baggage and the junk. Don't take what's not good, you know what I mean? Like, go in there and take the good meat and then leave everything else, you know? And I was able to do that while I was in graduate school. And there was a lot of good that came out of that experience. I can't say that I would have necessarily had the same level of critique in that space that I would have had at like a Morgan State, in the arts specifically, right? And it's nothing against Morgan State, it's just a different ballgame, right? I stepped into Micah understanding that, okay, I want to compete at this level with these artists, right? So I gotta learn what it is that they know, you know what I mean? Like, that isn't necessarily what's being taught at at Morgan in their curriculum, or it could be, like, I don't know. But I'm aware that stepping into that particular space was going to put me mentally where I needed to be in order to compete at this level, right? That's why I did it. Everything else I left. I still walked out looking like this. You know what I mean? I still, like, my family is still my family, my people are still my people. Nothing about that changed. I just knew what I needed to do, and needed to learn in order to get where I needed to be. Now, to go back on Morgan, because I don't want to make that, like, what we need is like someone like myself or someone that has been in those spaces to go into like a Morgan to educate in that way. Nothing wrong with any of the professors there, I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying, if that's what you want to go for, I think we gotta understand there's an opportunity to kind of cross-pollinate use what we learn from different spaces, take it back home, and then build it at home.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with that. I think that, first of all, anybody that has been a part of, has anybody been to a music, originally if you've been to a music programs, dance that rainfall summer? Right. So we've evolved. I had to learn that I had to evolve constantly. That is not a great paradigm. We're trying to get funded. And we're trying to get people, well, what's going on now, right? But I thought that it was a lot, but then it actually was all aligned. So one of the examples I'll give is for NGS, for New Generation Scholars, I started out with young people as young as 10 years old. Okay. I said I want to go study at the Schomburg. I want them to go into the art. I did take them into the archives at the Schomburg, so I guess that's cool, but it was really difficult, right? Then I said I want to travel with them. So then we moved to a study abroad program, and then I said that we would do an all-year program and focus on image making, right? And the reason why I had to keep shifting, and now here we are at Young Artists Archival Fellowship and the Black Film Freedom School, the reason why we evolved is because I talk to the young people and you won't tell me. They tell me what they need, right? I also can see, as a person from another generation, what you all need. So that trust relationship has to be built. The same thing happens when you're a parent, hopefully. The same thing happens when we build that trust. I've just been talking about allyship. What Jerrell is saying is, and I always tell people, go, take the meat and leave the rest. If you don't eat meat, you know what I'm saying. But you don't, sometimes with different generations, it's all of this heavy critique. You're not doing this right. You don't wear that bracelet right. You don't speak about femmes right. You don't, and it's like, hold on one second. Let's go back to history. How have Black people been raised up in this place, in this country? I went to Oregon. He's not lying about that.
I went to Oregon too, by the way.
Okay. He's not lying about that. But the thing about it is, it's like, we can go and say, oh, this is not good for us. But then you go, like Jerrell saying, he now has this master's degree, he has all of this experience. And aside from that, what I want to say about you, and I'm sure I told you and Sheila, I love you all as people. And that's one of the biggest things with me. I am surrounded by great people who happen to be great writers and great scholars and great artists, right? So when I think about the ways in which we have to build up our institutions, it takes labor, it takes work. So with the young people, when things are not working out for you and you're complaining about it, which is typical, right? It happens, right? When you're looking at the person that's providing you this opportunity, dare I say your parents, dare I say, if Dr. Bedolla says come in and have a show and you don't like the wall space she gave you. Again, kind of take a step back to realize that the labor that we're all putting in and creating our own is totally different, right? So with that being said, we build this allyship, we build this trust, and then I start to evolve it. And then as you matriculate through your life, you as an image maker, Elena, and if you're still in Baltimore, I'm like, well, would you like to come and teach photography? Because the work you're doing right now, right? There's the research that I've asked you to do, the questioning that you're now prepared in a different way, along with the education you might be getting from Micah and wherever else. Now you can bring it back. And that's how you evolve. Sometimes it looks smaller, but it still is very impactful. When we look at the people that we're thinking about, we think about Jeffrey Kent, and I know Jeffrey as well, right? There's maybe not a million of Jeffrey Kents, right? I don't know. But Bella Hooks, Franz Fanon, right? All of these people that we study, Catherine Dunham, Joffrey Holder. When we think about those folks, because I used to think, oh, I gotta serve hundreds of young people. I used to really think that. That was at the time. Okay, I did. But I thought about it and I said, oh no, right? That's not how it is, because we're studying people, right, that then start to provide us with the blueprint that we need, right? And if I'm now planting a seed in you all, hopefully one or two of you, hopefully more, will be that person to start their own gallery, to go into a space and not need validation, to build, your own institution. Because all of the complaining that we do, like, oh, there's nowhere for young people to go. We don't have the support. When I go to Micah, they give me a critique and they're, well, now this is the difference, right? And no, this doesn't feel comfortable, but it requires labor, it requires grace, and it requires solidarity. So with that, with the evolution of how I'm building up, and I'm really excited about the summer because I'm going back to work with these young people, but Naeem's going to be in charge. But it's like, that's the seed that has to be planted. You know, and so what are they going to tell me about the next way that Muse 360 has to evolve? And you know, aside from institutional evolution or whatever, like we have to evolve for self. You know, I've evolved as a person. When I became a mother, I evolved, right? I evolved when I thought that it was the end of the world when things kind of come crashing down. When you be like, when I was gone from you, be like, oh my gosh, I don't have a space to go. Well, sure enough, you own a space. It's not going to have, you know, 3 dance studios, right? But now you can build a dark room. Now you can build a screen printing practice. Not that I do these things, but I know that you all need it. So y'all come on in there and do that, right? So that's how you evolve, right? And then the freedom of being able to do what you want to do, right? With the funding that you have, with the funding or lack thereof. That's how Black people, that's how we are. That's what we do. So, you know, that evolution, like that type of spirit of evolution, I hope you all, for everyone, it's not just about young people, because a lot of adults, a lot of my people are like, where's my trip? You know, where's my class, right? Where's my critique? So I get it, like we do need spaces where we can all cultivate ourselves, right? So anyway, I hope that, you know, that is thought of for you all, and anybody that is close to me that's been friends of mine, like you see me evolve. I've seen you, some of you all evolve, and it's not, you know, one of the things that I learned through therapy. And also my mom used to say, you know, you can't experience growth without some kind of pain. And I hated that. I was like, that don't sound good. Like, pain. It was like, yeah, when you grow, you're shedding. You're going through other types of things. You know, and also in that essay, Touch the Earth by Bell Hooks, you know, when she talks about like looking at nature, and this is a common thing that you don't think about, but you know how nature always knows that it has what it needs. You know, so again, for Black folks, like we have emulated that in some kind of spiritual way. So again, like thinking about that, going into these spaces with that level of aura, I'm hoping that everybody can kind of carry that. And like I said, when you leave those spaces, then you evolve in whatever way you need to, and hopefully you pour back into not only yourself, but your community, so you're not just complaining about it or trying to escape it and then complaining about that, right? And again, we're human beings, we can complain, right? But I'm just saying that, you know, I think I've been geared up to really, and I do think that kind of speaks to the discipline, right, and the commitment. I have been geared up to think about like what kind of solutions there are, you know. And the one resource that I will share, there's a table called Roles of Liberation. So I don't really use the word leadership anymore, but for my young people, I show them the table of Roles for Liberation by Slow Factory. Because if you look at the Roles for Liberation, it has like 15 roles. So we need everybody. That's another way you evolve. That's another way you evolve, right? I don't need to be the person that is great at computers. Jerrell could be that. I don't need to be the person that knows how to collage. You can do that, right? So it's like understanding like the visionaries, understanding the luminaries, understanding the person that can be the person to listen, right? Like understanding that we all need everyone kind of helps you to evolve your organization or your practice too. So yeah, those are the things that I'm constantly thinking about.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Yes. Yes, please.
I heard something last year that blew my mind. It was from these 2 guys. They started a company called Carpet Company, if you're familiar. It's like a clothing brand or whatever. Carpet Company. Yeah. So they started their own thing in like 2016 or so. Long story short, they got a call from Nike, right? And they headed to the Nike. They went to the Nike headquarters. And their experience at the Nike headquarters, when they told me about their experience, it blew my mind. They said they were walking through the facilities and they were looking in these offices and they saw like all these people, right? People just sitting around doing their thing. And that's all it was. It was a bunch of people in different offices doing their job. That's it. It's Nike, but it's a bunch of us. Like as creators, Nike doesn't have any ideas. We are. Without the people, it don't move. Like we have the ideas within ourselves. We just have to work together as like a corporation, think like a company, think like a corporation, work together, bring our resources together, bring our ideas together, create a Nike. It's that simple. That's how it works. And then you have people at the top that just know how to monetize off of it. They monetize off every idea that you come up with. You got the people in the finance office, working the people in the creative office. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we come up with this idea, we gonna take it, we gonna market it, we gonna push it here. That's how it happens.
Well, thank you. I mean, what I heard today, I'm inspired and fired up. So I'm hoping that everyone here. Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see your hand. Please, last question.
Hi, this actually isn't a question. It's also praise for Sharayna. As I was listening to her speak, tell her story, and watching some of the slides, it unlocked a memory. One of the photos of her teaching at YMCA. So that's how Sharayna and I actually connected. I was looking for a space for dance. I started I danced as a young girl. I didn't go as far and study like Sharayna, but I was looking for a space to move my body and dance, and somehow I linked up with Sharayna, and then we reconnected at UB Lake, we used 360. And I would come, she would have adult classes, so I would come to my adult classes during the week. And actually, she did a piece for physicality, so that's how I was introduced to physicality. And then we went to the stage performance of physicality at Morgan. So I just wanted to, give you praise and say that I see you as a teacher, staple in the community, even a breed. I listen to you. I learn things every time I hear you speak. So I just wanted to say that you are needed, and I'm proud of the work that you are doing.
Beautiful, thank you. So it's just beautiful to hear your testimony, knowing the impact that you are making, Sharayna and Jerrell, on our community and at large, right? Because what we hope that people experience through whatever work that you're doing, that they will be inspired to go out in their communities and be as impactful. Mentor, care, love, share, and there's unity. And this world can become a far better place in which we all can exist. So thank you all for being here today, supporting these brilliant individuals. And thank you, Alex, for contributing your thoughts as it relates to the work that they're doing. So thank you all. So enjoy the refreshments.
Lots of refreshments.